IVM.
Welcome to episode 66 of Shunya One. We have Nityanand Sharma, the founder of Simpl, with us today. Unfortunately, I wasn't there at the episode during the time of the recording, but Shilatya had a great conversation with him, which I think you guys will really love. In the meantime, please make sure you check out the Slack channel. We had an interesting poll question last week where we asked everybody what they look for when they're downloading a fitness app. And the clear answer is that people are looking for a brand behind the app for credibility. That seems to be the most important thing that they're looking for over there. So I think that's an interesting insight, and as a follow-up from Vishal Gondal's conversation last week. And now I think it is time for you to take you into the show with Nityanand.
All right, welcome to Shunya One. I'm with Nitya Sharma, the co-founder and CEO of Simpl. Welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, Shaladitya. Thanks for having me here.
Yes, I'm so glad you made it. Of course, you do a lot of Bombay trips, even though you're based out of Bangalore. And I think Simpl also started initially out of Bombay before you, like every other tech startup, made the move. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and how it all sort of came to be?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Just a very quick thing, like what we are trying to do at Simpl is really we are imagining a future where payments happen automatically, right? Payments should be in the fabric of living, right? We say that the best payment experience is no experience, and that's the world we are imagining. Now, why do we do this? Just a quick background. Before starting Simpl, I used to live in the US, and I used to work on Wall Street trading bonds, which is what I did for almost 10 years. Prior to that, I grew up in India and studied here and went to grad school in the US. In 2014, what was clear to me and my co-founder Chetra was that people are moving to the mobile platform faster than they have moved to the mobile platform in any geography in the world, in India, in terms of buying retail commerce. But transactions are still settled with cash. Right? And the problem was not, as far as I saw, that there's no bank accounts or, people didn't have instruments. People had instruments, right? Cards were there, debit cards and so on. And people still preferred cash on delivery. So we kind of said, why do people prefer cash on delivery? And I think one realization we had was that cash on delivery is actually a very good user experience. It solves for a one-click checkout on mobile, and also solves very importantly for trust deficit in commerce, especially e-commerce, right? That's where Simpl came out of. So electronically, how can you solve it, right? One other thing that we kind of very quickly noticed, especially in the Indian context, was people in India have been buying on a khata, the tab, for centuries, right? And by the way, tab and khata is a thing that happens around the world, right? That's the most natural way people buy, right? So what we said was, let's use that idea of a khata and then scale it for the world of internet and mobile and data and see where it goes, right? So that's how we started Simpl about 2.5 years back. And yeah, we are here now. It's things are good. Yeah.
And of course, coming back to how you actually went around, solving for this, it's an interesting point you mentioned where COD was sort of actually a great experience, except for the fact that there was no assurance of the collection on the other side, right? Because there was no intermediary involved. There was, of course, the delivery guy who had to handle cash, and there was a risk in managing cash and so on. When you built this out, what were the challenges you saw in terms of, obviously, apart from solving for the user experience from a tech angle, from a business perspective? I know you work closely with, obviously, banks and the government and a whole bunch of other stuff, right? So how 2 years ago when you started, how much time did it actually to get going off the ground?
Yeah, totally. Before I get to that, just quick comment on the cash part, right? Not only there is an explicit cost of cash, which is, pilferage and losses and, all these logistics, which is very, very expensive. That cost itself for small transactions, right, which are anything under 500 rupees, oftentimes is 7 to 8% per transaction. But the other cost that I don't think people calculate very explicitly is when a customer is buying on cash on delivery, it's really an option to buy.
Yeah, it's
right?
not confirmed. Yeah.
It's there is a confusion there, right, in terms of commitment, right? And there could be multiple reasons why I'd say no, right? It could be because I'm just not at home, right? And you show up and you bring my food or grocery and, it's like, okay, take it back, right? I don't care. So many things. So that optionality of cash is very, very expensive, and that optionality is on the merchant, right? So they are bearing the cost. So anyways, cost. I mean, cash, while is a very good user experience, it's very, very expensive to operate. One of the biggest challenges we had about this business, which is something that most payment companies who are not payment processors but payment networks face, is the bootstrapping of a network, which is a classic chicken and egg problem, right? Mm-hmm. You're building a marketplace, you need suppliers and sellers, buyers, and so on. In our case, it's kind of like, I say that's a lot, like it's like selling the first fax machine in the world, right? No one wants to buy the first fax machine, right? Mm-hmm. So that was the hard part. We had great customers early on, like Fasos, Jaydeep at Fasos, very supportive of the idea. He saw the vision, and he took us online first, and we impressed them, and I think we do great business with them now. And then it just cascaded to the entire vertical of food delivery, food tech. Now we work with most large food tech, food delivery merchants in India. Right. And then, as I say, first merchant is impossible, 10 is very hard, 100 is easy. Right. So we've crossed 100 now. We are one of the largest, pay later product in India, by far, I think. Mm-hmm. And now, we have a very difficult ask of keeping on building this business and make it we think that this is not what Simpl is, and our vision for what we are building is, it's not a niche alternate payment product, right? We think this is going to be the mainstream way people would buy online. Right. It's like khata, right? People buy on khata all the time, right? So that's what we're doing, and kind of like ready to get scale now.
Nice. And just again, for most, maybe a lot of folks here have actually used the product, right? But if you could maybe detail out exactly what are the two sides you're playing here, and how it all comes together.
Yeah. So this is what the product is. It's a button that shows up on the mobile checkout or the website of an e-commerce merchant, right? So it's a one-click checkout, like Amazon one-click. Mm-hmm. It allows consumers to charge this transaction into an account, which is like an Amex charge card. It gives consumers full buyer protection and enable retailers give loyalty points to their customers directly on the platform, right? So imagine this product is the combination of one-click checkout, Amex, PayPal, and the best loyalty program you have seen, all in one button and full stack. Right. And the way we think about our product is, or our platform is, we are merchant first, consumer centric. Mm-hmm. Right. We believe, the original sin of payments, as I like to call it, is payments have always been issuer centric products. Right. Cards are basically the customer for, large networks is banks. Right. However, the transaction is happening between the consumer and merchants. Yeah. Right. And that's the dichotomy there. Right. Yeah. So the whole transaction experience is controlled by a third party, whereas the transaction is happening with two parties. And that's why cash works, because cash enables merchants and consumers to interact the way they want to. Right?
On their own terms. Yeah.
On their own terms, and create user experiences that they want, right? Pay now, pay later, or whatever. So what we are doing is building the digital form of that. And that's why we call ourselves merchant first, consumer centric, enabling merchants to deliver consumer experiences that they want to deliver. And what we also believe very strongly is every merchant, especially merchants in different categories, what the best experience is different. Yeah. So if you're buying movie ticket, it's different from taxi, which is different from food.
Okay. Yeah.
Or if you are consuming media on the internet, right? The experience that the consumer wants, or you want to deliver as a merchant to the consumer, is different, right? The question is, how will you do it, right? And that's what Simpl is. It's really not a product. It's a platform with a bunch of API endpoints where you can control that transaction experience.
And it's obviously the payment, its experience is the core experience of what you're talking about.
Right? We say the best payment experience is no experience. Right. So dissipating experience is the experience, right? Really, we have never heard anybody saying, I want payments. Never, ever. Ever you will hear from a consumer or merchant, they will say, I want payments. Mm-hmm. Everybody wants to buy, right? So, we define the problem statement for the merchant that we solve is, every merchant's problem statement is, I want more customers to buy more, and buy more often.
Yeah.
Right?
That's all they want.
That's all they want, right? And thinking about it in a payment term is not the right way to solve the problem.
Okay.
Right? Same with the consumer, right? Consumer wants to buy easily, buy in a hassle-free way. And get as many loyalty points as possible, and get affordability when they need it. Right. On the consumer side, our current proposition is really two things. We don't sell payments. We sell a effortless checkout experience and peace of mind.
Okay.
Right. When you work with Simpl as a consumer, you will always get the best resolution of any conflict, your full buyer protection, the experience is always great. Any problem you have will be resolved like at the highest level of consumer experience. Right. So that's how we think about it.
Right. So again, coming back to a little bit of the challenges which you faced in building all of this, right? Because to me, it sounds like there's a whole bunch of components which go to providing this invisible experience, like you're saying. Because not only do you have to work with the current payment infrastructure and layer on top of that, which I think fundamentally has a lot of processes, let me just put it simply.
Yeah.
It's not been the best. We've always had issues with, doing subscription sort of payments and all these other experiences which customers are used to abroad, right? India is a zero trust market when it comes to payments. It's that, and then of course there's the entire layer of due diligence which you have to do because you're essentially also a credit platform, right? You're building profiles of people who you can afford to give credit to, and you're mitigating risk in a lot of ways. And like you just said, if you're also solving for things like making sure that they have trust on buyer protection and so on, right? So there's a lot of layers to your business.
Correct.
So how was building all of these pieces?
Yeah, no, it's obviously.
Did you imagine them from day one?
Well, we obviously had a fair level of high level thoughts around these are the problems, but obviously like any business, you build one, you just learn, right? And the question is, are you learning fast enough is the question, right? So I think we are doing good in terms of learning fast. So I think you're asking two questions here, right? One is how are we able to provide this experience we want to explain, and work with the existing infrastructure is the first question, right? And in the classic, like how Apple thinks sometimes, right? Which is, look, we first imagined the perfect user experience. We said, like, we don't even want to worry about what exists. We will just imagine experience. So let's just imagine XYZ is the experience, right? And then we work backwards around, try to figure out how do we work with the existing world, what do we need to invent, what do we need to plug in, and like provide that experience that is close enough to our ideal experience. So that's number one, right? Now, the interesting, I think what we have done is that when you think about buying, right? It's a transaction that is happening in the consumer and merchant, and the checkout is the last mile.
Yeah.
Right? What we have done is completely separated the checkout, which is the last mile, from anything that exists that touches the existing infrastructure.
Okay.
Right? So checkout is nothing but a promise to pay.
Okay.
If you think about it, right? No money is moving anywhere, right?
Okay.
And therefore the experience is completely under our control. And eventually we intersect with the existing infrastructure when settlements happen, right? So we are time shifting the point of buying to the point of payment or settlement, right?
Correct.
Which is typically 2 weeks in our case.
Correct.
Yeah, 2 weeks is where we work with the existing establishment, right? Now the interesting about India especially, and which is why India is such an exciting place to build Simpl, is India in terms of existing infrastructure has leapfrogged anywhere else. Basically the infrastructure that exists anywhere else in the world.
Okay.
Example, 800 million people in India have a bank account now. India is one of the most banked countries in the world.
Wow.
It was driven by the PM Modi's policies like Jan Dhan Yojana and stuff, right? Now it's questionable whether all the 800 people are consumers. That's separate, but people do have the fundamental infrastructure of having a bank account and having to store value.
Okay.
Right. India is also one of the most progressive banking regimes in the world in terms of regulatory frameworks.
Okay.
Right. India has the most sophisticated interbank, what we call interbank liquidity networks. So bank accounts are connected to each other through UPI. Through RTGS, through NEFT, through IMPS, through debit rails, and so on, right? What it does is it creates redundancy and multiple switches through which money can move, right? We call it the internet of money, right? So, which is a very hard thing to build, by the way, right? This plumbing and all of that, that's why Visa is so valuable and right? In India, it has been given to us on a platter, right? Almost, right? India also, most of the world now, we have 350 million people connected to, having smartphones, connected to the internet. And when you think about smartphone connected to internet, they have access to unlimited computation power.
Yeah.
Right? India also has this India stack, Aadhaar, identity and stuff, open APIs, right? Question then is how do you stitch this together, right? And build that user experience that we are discussing, right? So fundamentally, India's infrastructure is better than anywhere in the world. Nowhere like UPI, through IMPS, you can settle money in real time, 24/7 for no cost almost, right? Nowhere else you will hear this in the world, Right.
Wow.
So that's
we take it for granted.
We take it for granted, and I think the reason we take it for granted is so far, people look. We are from payments and tech and stuff, so we think about all these things way too much.
Yeah.
But if you ask a normal consumer, young Indian, they don't understand all these things, right? No one wants to decide what to pay with, right? They just want to buy. That's a fundamental problem, right? And I think that's why, right? I think we are saying like, look, this is the background, right? When I'm using Netflix, I'm not using internet.
Yeah.
Right? I'm watching a movie.
Yeah.
Right? Similarly, when I'm buying and I'm paying, I'm not using UPI or IMPI, like all these things. I'm using a consumer experience or whatever, right? Yeah. So that's your fundamental answer, right? So we have to interact with the establishment architecture, but that is also first class right now, right? But we still interact with it once in 15 days, right? Therefore, we are able to very cohesively build this experience with help from merchants. Right, so they are the ones who are powering this experience. So that's one. Second is, of course, how do you do it in a way where it is, there is not enough fraud and stuff, right? Is the second question, right? And that's a data problem, right? So one of the fundamental technology we are building is essentially identify trustworthy nodes in a network, right? Through big data.
Nice.
Right. So if Shailaditya is established to be trustworthy for whatever reason, and if he says Nitya is good, then there is some signal there, right? If merchant XYZ says that Shailaditya is a regular customer and on so on, that's a very strong signal around your trust, right? So when you think about millions of people like that and hundreds of thousands of merchants, and you then plot trust nodes, you get very interesting patterns through which you can run, large-scale machine learning models to be able to reduce fraud, underwrite credit better, and make sure you are getting the right people in the system.
Awesome.
Yeah. And then one thing we, very strongly believe is it's also a lot of design itself, right? So example is Airbnb, right? Random people staying in each other's houses is a crazy idea, but they solved it through data and design. And communication, right? So it's a design approach to systematically creating a trust network, which can scale infinitely, because in the end, the network is on the mobile and internet.
Correct. Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. I mean, when I actually am impressed with your, praise of the Indian infrastructure.
It's first class.
I think we all take that for granted. But on that note, I'm going to take a quick break, come back, and dig a little deeper into the whole payments discussion we're having.
So it's been another great week on IVM Podcast. If you're not following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Last week, we launched a new podcast called the Kinetic Living Podcast with Urmi Kothari. It's a show about keeping fit both physically and mentally. Listen to our conversation with some of the most interesting people and how they went on their fitness journeys. On Cyrus Says this week, Cyrus speaks to Nihal Mariwala, co-founder of Setu India. They speak about health culture in this country. On Kolaba Cartel, I'm joined by Gauri, Jay, Abhishek and Sumit, who reveal how they came up with the concept for the new restaurant, Misty. On Geek Fruit this week, Tejas and Dinkar discuss all things in pop culture that are so bad they're hilariously good. This week on Shunya One, Shailaditya speaks to Nitya Sharma from Simpl. That's the sign you see every time you have to enter the OTP for your payments on the apps that you use. On The Scene and the Unseen, Amit Verma speaks to journalist and China expert Manoj Kevaralmani to dissect China's foreign policy and its impact on India. And with that, let's continue with your show.
All right, welcome back. We're talking with Nitya about, obviously, all the things that he has to do to make payments simple. And one of those things, of course, is while you've built out this network of a whole bunch of things to make this seamless, coming from the last part of of the conversation, right? You're building out understanding of your network of people who are using you. What are some of the things which you're seeing which totally you didn't expect, or we think that there's a lot of fraud happening outside in the country, and that's why we have all these two-factor authentication and so much. Like, payments were hard. You're trying to make them simple. What is that gray area in between? What's the reality that you're seeing?
Yeah, no, absolutely. As you said, right, to make something simple, there's something very complicated going on in the background. So it's certainly complicated. One of the realities is wherever money is involved, where is commerce involved, there is fraud, right? It's not about payments. It's always there, right? Especially when commerce is happening on the internet, there's more chances of fraud, right? So, given we are in the payment business, that is something that we have to actively solve for all the time, right? One of the things that we saw, I'll give you an example. I think you'll find it fascinating. There are WhatsApp groups in India, typically run by young students. They're all smart people, by the way. So it's not like a typical vision of a fraudster. It's like young, smart people from good colleges, they will be like doing what is called coupon fraud. So basically what that means is when a retailer put out a coupon, right? It's typically a customer acquisition channel, right? So I use a coupon, and the idea is get you to use a coupon only once, right? But customers do a lot of things around, especially smart engineers, that they can, have IMEI, simulators on their phone, like bunch of things that they do that a basic application or e-commerce merchant that is not the most sophisticated merchant in the world is not able to detect. So that means that I can keep on using multiple coupons all the time, although I'm one person, right? Which is the fundamental problem, right? So then I start a WhatsApp group. I would, right? And say, okay, come, who wants a ride? Who wants movie tickets? Who wants food, right? And I will, 50% discount, right?
Wow.
Yeah, it is not uncommon at all, right? The interesting thing is because, we are obviously building this, we are always keeping an eye on these things, and we see these things, and we are building fundamental infrastructure to do this. We also get people in the group. It's like, I want to tell you that this fraud is happening in our college, for instance.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's very, very exciting. And what we have seen is, and this is what I was referring to, the communication aspect and some of the software aspect of designing systems is people are like, you are trusting people, and, I feel it's my moral obligation to report to you that this thing happened and these, those things. A lot of times what we see is fraud is not a fraud. It's really a challenge some smart people are taking to, just say, let me break the system, right? Yeah. It's a very weird, game theory problem here, right? So that's what we see.
Interesting.
And I think this is what everybody is seeing. It's very common in besides payment as well. So we are definitely fundamentally building the architecture to be able to solve for that, right? Now, I want to give you an analogy which will help you understand why what we are doing makes a lot of sense for the future, right? Basically, if you think about it, right, future is going to be where, as I said, we will be going around and doing commerce. And if payments is always something that is a 2-minute task and standing in lines and stuff, it just disrupts commerce, right? So imagine a world where, I have a calendar to go to meet Shaliditya for a podcast. My Alexa will say, hey, Nitya, you have a meeting at 9 o'clock. Should I order you an Uber, right? So I'll say, yes. So Alexa will order me an Uber. The Uber will come, and Alexa will be like, hey, Uber is coming, and there is a Starbucks, on the way, and Starbucks wants to give you a 20% discount to get a coffee. It's morning. You typically have a coffee. Would you like the Uber driver to pick up the coffee, right? And I said, yeah, I need coffee. So can you, yes, please, right? So then Uber will go and pick up the coffee, and I'll sit in the Uber, have my coffee, and come to you, right? Yeah. That's what I want to do, right? Now the question is, if we are swiping cards everywhere and like all these things, how will it work, right? It can't happen, right? So payment has to be intelligently woven into the fabric of buying. Now, while doing so, you have to prevent fraud.
Yeah.
The question is how, right? So today, payments are not predictive in nature at all. Right? So question is, how do you build a predictive application which is payment related is the question, right? So if you think about your mobile phone, a smartphone, is the card, that is a version of a card being smart. So let me give you an example. So 20 years back, we all were using PDF maps, right? Or 25 years back, whatever, right? You would go buy a map book for $20, then you can go around US, on the paper maps, right?
Yeah.
Now that paper map gets dumber with time, meaning new roads get created, it's not getting updated, right? Yeah. Today we have Google Maps. Yeah. What is Google Maps? It's nothing but that map, but it gets smarter with time. And the reason it gets smarter is there is this data coming, like everybody in Bombay who's going around in a taxi or walking around is selling signals back to Google saying, hey, this is a traffic or whatever, and it is being given to Nitya in a personalized way to solve my peculiar problem to go between Bandra and Andheri West.
Yeah.
In a predictive nature and not like some sort of nature where, something happened 10 years back, right? Now, when you think about a card as we know of, right, it's a paper map, right? Now, if you think about the card as a mobile first, internet first, digital first product, right, it is the Google Maps, right? It predicts fraud. Yeah. It predicts customer behavior. It predicts credit. It predicts risk. much faster than, not reactive, it's just predictive, right?
Yeah.
It predicts, and that way we think about it today, if I have a Citibank Premier card, whether you have a card or I have a card, we'll have the same credit limit, we'll have the same loyalty points, we'll have the same whatever, two-factor and stuff. But the fact is we are two different people.
Right.
Our behaviors are different. Our spends are different, right? We should be able to get customized, loyalty points, whatever, because you might like coffee, I don't like coffee, and so why should we all get coffee, right? And that's the future, we believe, has to be, right? The second is and you brought up, two-factor and stuff, right? What we do is a multi-factor authentication. It is exponentially more safe and secure than a card, right? When you think about card, right, we think about this a lot, right? If you ask a security engineer today, if cards did not exist, would you actually have a piece of plastic with 16 digits sitting in a pocket as the security design for payment network? Answer is no. That's silly, right? I mean, like, what the hell, right? But the reason is this whole thing was invented 40 years back, right? And networks are very strong, right? But the opportunity in places like India is two things, right? One is there is a new platform, which is internet, right? Which helps you leapfrog the network. Right. Second is there is no network to start with. Right? Cache is the network, right? So when you create the Google Maps version of the card, the mobile is the card, then suddenly these data points are hundreds of factors of authentication that is helping you predict fraud at an exponentially higher scale than, two-factor.
And actually, of course, solving for the payment
and solving for that user experience, right? So while it's safe, it's such a better user experience, right? So that's what we believe, and we are already accomplishing that. But I think this is a 10-year journey, right? There is just too much to do because we think we are already seeing it, right? How merchants are innovating on delivering consumer experiences is crazy scale, right? And crazy audacious, things people are trying to do, right? And we just want to, keep pace with that and just keep on giving them what they need.
Yeah. I know I can attune to it because I know that now I order food more because you've made it so simple.
Yeah.
I literally go on Zomato and say, that's it. It's done. Food is on the way.
It's on the way, right? We have seen 50% increase typically in frequency of purchase if on the cohort of consumers who kind of use Simpl.
Wow.
Especially in areas around, these non-discretionary spends, which people have to do, right? When you think about food or grocery, right? I have to eat food, right? So all the food retailers, merchants, whether online or offline, is competing with the kitchen. The competition is not among themselves. It's competition with your stomach and your food and your Maggi to make noodle, right? And any friction that can be reduced from the point of decision of wanting to have food and to actually having food in my stomach is a friction, and any friction point reduced is better. And payment has been.
I can see that.
Yeah, payment is a big has been, and I think we are solving that quite well.
Yeah, awesome. Of course, and I have a little side note around. You gave a good example around how cards were invented 40 years ago in general, right? But when you come to India, and even though you said it's such an exciting place for payments, it's still the adoption for just what was invented 40 years ago itself is so fundamentally low. Mm-hmm. What is your take on that, and how do you think suddenly we are going to sort of graduate from a notional value of every single young guy out there who wants to solve for user experience? How will they suddenly get going on this?
Yeah. So I have an analogy here again. So you remember SMS, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
The whole world was using SMSs except India, right? People were using missed calls as a proxy for SMS because of whatever reason, right? I'll give you an example of my parents, for instance, my dad, right? My dad is an engineer, very educated person, worked most of his life, but always did not like checking his emails. Why? I mean, because just the experience of putting his username and password and stuff was just friction enough that he would not check his email. When I used to live in New York, he would actually call me. He's like, Nityan, can you check my emails, right? And I used to read them, right? Seriously. Now, everybody's on WhatsApp. Yep. Everybody. There was no adoption problem, right? Because WhatsApp was not about chatting. It was not technology. It was a user experience, right? No one wants to use technology. No one is asking for technology. People are asking for user experience, right? Now, everybody's on WhatsApp, the whole world.
Yeah.
Right. And, from grandmothers to 6-year-old babies, everybody's on WhatsApp, right? So that's what user experiences are, right? Again, 10 years back, 15 years back, having even BlackBerry and stuff was like complicated. You have to be an investment
power
banker,
user,
banker type consultant. Were walking around with BlackBerry. Today, everybody has a smartphone. Why? Because smartphone is not a phone. It's like something which I touch and feel, and like they give me crazy things, right? And it just keeps on getting better with time, right? So it's user experiences, right? And we have to like that's how we think about it, right? So card is just not a user experience. At the last mile, it's broken, right? Now, one thing that people do not realize about US and cards is it was a 50-year journey there, right? People started using cards in regular stores in the 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s, right? In early 90s, catalog commerce started. Phone commerce started. TV commerce started, which was the first version of you are talking to somebody on the phone and like giving the card number and that type of stuff, right? And then Amazon came in mid 90s. Right, where they conditioned people to put the cards and stuff.
Yeah.
Right. So when you look at today, it's a 50-year journey. It's not like it didn't happen in 5 years.
Right.
Right. So to expect that, I mean, if we keep on not doing anything, and it'll happen in India also and around the world. But that's where the technology comes in, right? Things have leapfrogged. We don't need proprietary networks to wire money. Now there is UPI and all these good stuff. You create a user experience. You have smartphones. You have internet. You have so much data. How do you reimagine this whole thing is the question, right? The fundamental thing is how do you reimagine it, right? And reimagine focused on the user, right? Is the fundamental thing, right? So we believe, that's true for any technology adoption, I guess. And the way we think about it is it's not technology adoption, it's user experience adoption. So user experience improvement. It always is kind of like this plateau type thing. And then when you hit that tipping point of user experience, it just exponentially increases, right? We believe in 5 years, that's our vision, India will, at least in e-commerce, will have near 0% cash on delivery.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice. I mean, that's a good future to hope for, of course. But the last point about working, how we are leapfrogging with tech. And of course, since you're in a regulated space, which is what payments is in India as well as everywhere else. Do you think the tech which we are really solving for, the background tech which you have to ultimately use is also getting better? Are they also jumping and seeing this particular vision of user experience as a focus?
Yes.
Do you think banks and like... You're making networks obsolete in a lot of ways, right? The existing networks, so to speak. You're improving them by orders of magnitude. But are you also, how are you taking away the current infrastructure or the lack of it?
Well, I think the way we are thinking about it is it is we are collaborative, right?
My point was like, I know we've actually had a lot of folks from fintech talk to us here, and the fundamental theme seems to be that the existing tech or existing fin in fintech doesn't work, which is why tech is trying to solve for it, right? Like banks don't work. Banks are still is a place you go to where your money is physically stored and you have to take it out, and then there are these other instruments, and then there is an app, and then there is a website, but it's too clunky, right?
I mean, look, I think this is how I will articulate our experience around it. I don't think it's about banks and stuff. Fundamentally, it's about big companies and small companies, right? Big companies are, elephants don't dance, right? And it's not about banks, it's about any industry, right? Pick any industry, manufacturing. Why did GM not make Tesla? Why did NASA not make SpaceX? Why did AOL not make Google? Why did Google not make Facebook? Why did Facebook did not make Snapchat? Right? The world is full of those examples. Or why somebody did not make Uber? Why, right? What startups are always able to do is and at least the successful one is, are you able to see the world with a new insight? And is there a platform shift that you can capitalize on to kind of build on your insight, right? And typically, insights are, and you have to be slightly early than the market on the insight itself, right? Which means that you're not sure whether it's right or not. You are at the cusp of invention, and so you're always you're not sure whether what you were about to do is right or wrong, right? Now, when you think about big established companies, and a lot of times when there are platform shifts, right? Internet has come, right? So when you think about Comcast, right? For Comcast to say, okay, I think I want to become Netflix now, you have to kill your first business. Right? Which is very hard. Like, you can't do it, right? Especially at public company, all these things. And big companies have inertia and like various structures and stuff, right? And that's true for banks around the world, including India. So my experience is, and we talk to banks all the time, we collaborate with them. We actually, they're full of really smart people. And they have vision. They understand what they want to do. A lot of banks are now saying that, because of a lot of things, especially because we are big, we may not be able to move as fast as, companies, smaller companies. But we want to collaborate with companies like Simpl and so on, right? At the same time, where banks' speed of collaboration is slower, sorry. So, it's not about banks, it's really big companies, right? The other thing is, as I said, right, you are best experience payment. So no one is asking for payments, right? People are asking for an experience. Right. And truth is no one knows what the experience is.
What it can be.
Right, it can be, right? Yeah. So you just have a big vision around what it should be, and then you are very quickly iterating to figure out what that right path is, right? So you are like you're thinking like a consumer internet company where you are doing, you have a hypothesis and you do a bunch of testing and you kind of like look at data and like very quickly iterate, right? Big companies are just not good at doing it.
Correct.
Right,
Wow.
They have structural problems, decision-making problems, and a lot of times, sometimes too, you might realize, like, imagine if AT&T, let's say, said, "Oh, I can build WhatsApp," right? They will have to kill their SMS business first, right? Yeah. And because WhatsApp is leveraging the internet and mobile phone, they don't even have to. AT&T has invested in cell phone towers and all these things. So who'll make that decision?
Yeah,
right. It's very hard. But I think people are progressive. Sometimes establishments are just, has the inertia.
Right.
It will be always better for startups if big companies can work with them faster.
Right.
But
we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah.
But great, man. Thanks so much for doing this. This was awesome. I think it was a great refresher on what, not just how cool fintech is, and we are going to see how a lot more innovation in fintech is going to happen, but of course what you guys are doing to make things simple is astounding, and let's hope that more and more places start getting on board so that every single payment you do is pretty much seamless.
Yes.
And and tomorrow even paying it back, filling up, like redeeming my khata is also equally seamless.
Yes, that's what we are working on. That's our next innovation. How do you make the bill payment of Simpl as seamless as the payment of the buying your food, right? So we're working on that problem now.
Awesome, man. Yeah. Thanks so much. This was great. I, of course, don't have my co-host Amit with me today, so I am going to remind folks that, of course, how do folks get in touch with you on Twitter?
Yes, I'm at nsharma 0813 on Twitter.
Nice.
My email is nitya@getsimpl.com, getsimpl.com.
Yep. Of course, I'm sure Nitya will also be on our Slack channel. We have one where a whole bunch of folks all our listeners can ping in with feedback.
Awesome.
And of course, just to let you know, you have to go to the IVM Podcast website, which is ivmpodcast.com/Shunya One, and ask to join the Slack channel, and we'll send you an invite. And that apart, of course, you should check out Simpl in all your favorite apps, a whole bunch of them all over the place, whether it's food, whether it's e-commerce, or whether it's all the other payment experiences that you have. Thanks so much for doing this, Nitya.
Thanks, Sharaditya. And I think this podcast was long due. We've been talking about this, so I'm happy we are able to do it today.
Yes.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you so much, guys. Please give us ratings and reviews on iTunes. And of course, get the IBM Podcasts app or wherever you do listen to podcasts. Please give us some feedback. Thank you.
Some time ago, 5 successful restaurateurs came together to form the Colaba Cartel. The founders of the table, Gauri Devi Dayal and Jay Yusuf, partnered with the founders of Woodside Inn, Abhishek Honawar, Pankil Shah, and Sumit Gambhir to open a new restaurant in Colaba. If you've ever dreamed of opening a restaurant or love eating out, you want to listen in. The Colaba Cartel. This exclusive 10-part series is hosted by Gauri Devi Dayal and Amit Doshi. Catch new episodes of the Colaba Cartel every Monday and Thursday on the IVM Podcasts app, website, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Did I just catch you on your way to work? Or did you end up pulling an all-nighter? Let me guess. You have a packed schedule for the day, the week, and probably the month and the year. That's a lot for your mind to handle, don't you think? This buzzing chaos also brings tons of negative thoughts. Am I right? Try spinning that bottle in a positive direction with me, Chetna, on the Positively Unlimited podcast, every Monday on IBM Podcasts. It's time to change your life one alphabet at a time.